At my husband's funeral, my daughter showed up with a lawyer and, standing right in front of the casket, announced loudly, "You need to vacate the presidency of the company today. From now on, I'm in charge." She handed me a court order with a smile on her face. I couldn't believe what was happening. August had only been gone for 3 days, and already Stella was making her move. My hands shook as I took the paper from her. The other mourners stared in shocked silence. "Stella, this is your father's funeral," I whispered, my voice breaking. "How could you do this now?" "It's just business, Mother," she replied, her voice cold and hard like her father's used to be during tough negotiations. "Dad always said timing is everything." That same day, when I arrived at the office, security was waiting for me. Our head of security, Marco, who had worked with us for 15 years, couldn't look me in the eyes. I remembered everything I had gone through to build that empire with August. All the late nights, the sacrifices, the clients I had personally secured when we were just starting out. Where had I gone wrong? What monster of a daughter had I created? I hadn't even taken off my morning dress when Stella ordered the employees to escort me out. They packed my personal items in boxes while she watched from August's office, now her office. Our staff looked at me with pity, but no one dared to speak up. "Mrs. Campbell, I'm so sorry," Marco whispered as he walked me to my car. "This isn't right." "It's okay, Marco. You have a family to support," I said, though nothing was okay. As I drove away, 30 years of my life remained behind me in that building. 30 years of building something from nothing with August. From the small consulting firm we started in our garage to Campbell Enterprises, now worth millions. 3 days later, I sat in my kitchen staring at old photos, trying to understand how my sweet little girl had turned into this person I didn't recognize. Stella smiling on her 5th birthday, her front tooth missing. Stella graduating from college, her face glowing with pride as August and I applauded. Stella at her wedding 2 years ago, August walking her down the aisle. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Thomas, our family lawyer and August's oldest friend. "Teresa, I need to see you immediately," he said, his voice urgent. "There's something you need to know about August's will and the company." "Stella already showed me the court order, Thomas. She's the majority shareholder now. That's what she thinks. August made some changes before he died. Please come to my office as soon as you can." An hour later, I sat across from Thomas as he explained what August had done. 3 months ago, August came to see me. He was worried about Stella's behavior. He'd noticed changes in her since she married Greg. He thought Greg was influencing her in negative ways, pushing her to demand more control in the company. Thomas slid a folder across his desk. August created a second will and a new company structure. He split the shares differently than Stella knows. But how? The court order is based on outdated information. Stella doesn't know about these changes. Thomas leaned forward. August also left you something else. A record of conversations between Stella and Greg, discussing how they planned to take over once August was out of the picture. He had become suspicious and recorded some of their phone calls. My blood ran cold. "What are you saying, Thomas?" "I'm saying that August was investigating whether Stella and Greg were hoping for his death. He didn't trust them anymore." "Are you suggesting they had something to do with his heart attack?" The room seemed to spin around me. "I'm not suggesting anything, Teresa, but August was concerned enough to protect you and the company. And there's more. Information about some questionable deals Stella and Greg have been making behind the scenes using company resources." I thought about August's sudden heart attack at only 62. How healthy he'd been. How Stella had been the one who found him in his office. "What do I do with this, Thomas?" "That's up to you. But legally, you have the power to challenge Stella's takeover. You're still the rightful president of Campbell Enterprises." I left Thomas's office with the folder clutched to my chest, my mind racing. Could my own daughter have wished for her father's death? For money and power? The thought made me physically ill. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went through every document Thomas had given me, every recorded conversation between Stella and Greg. In one particularly disturbing recording, they discussed how convenient it would be if August retired early or had to step down for health reasons. The next morning, I made my decision. I would fight for the company August and I had built together. Not out of greed, but because it was our legacy, and because Stella needed to learn that actions have consequences. I called Thomas. "I want to go to the office today. Can you come with me?" A few hours later, Thomas and I walked through the doors of Campbell Enterprises. Employees stared in surprise as we made our way to the executive floor. Stella's assistant jumped up when she saw us. "Mrs. Campbell, Ms. Stella is in a meeting." "This won't take long," I said, walking past her and pushing open the door to the boardroom. Stella was at the head of the table, surrounded by the company's executives. Her face paled when she saw me. "Mother, what are you doing here? Security!" "Don't bother," I said calmly. "Thomas, please hand out the documents." Thomas distributed copies of August's updated will and the new company structure to everyone at the table. Stella grabbed her copy, her eyes scanning the pages frantically. "This is fake," she said, her voice shaking. "This can't be real." "It's very real," Thomas replied. "Your father changed his will 3 months ago. Your mother remains president and majority shareholder of Campbell Enterprises." Stella's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this. I've already made plans, signed contracts." "What contracts, Stella?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Before she could answer, the boardroom door opened again. A man I'd never seen before walked in carrying a black folder. He nodded at Thomas. "Mrs. Campbell, my name is Daniel Ross. I'm a private investigator your husband hired before his death." Stella's eyes darted between us. "What is this?" Daniel placed the black folder on the table. "The results of my investigation." Stella reached for the folder, but I got to it first. I opened it and began reading the contents. The more I read, the more my heart broke. Evidence of Stella and Greg's schemes, plans to sell off company divisions for quick profit, hidden accounts, and most disturbing of all, a life insurance policy they had taken out on August 6 months ago. I looked up at my daughter, this stranger wearing Stella's face. The moment she saw what was inside the folder, the color drained from her face completely. "Mom, I can explain," she whispered. But before she could say another word, Greg burst into the boardroom, his face flushed with panic. "Stella, we need to leave now," he said, grabbing her arm. "They know everything. They know everything." Those 3 words hung in the air like a death sentence. Greg's face was pale with panic, his designer suit suddenly looking too big for him. Stella stared at him, then back at me, her eyes wide with something I hadn't seen there in years. Fear. "What exactly do we know?" Thomas asked, his lawyer's instinct for precision kicking in. Greg's jaw tightened. He glanced at the black folder in my hands, then pulled Stella closer to the door. "We need to go. Now." "You're not going anywhere," I said, finding strength I didn't know I had. "Not until we understand exactly what you two have done." The executives around the table shifted uncomfortably, witnesses to a family implosion they never expected to see. My hands trembled as I placed the folder on the table. "Stella," I said, looking directly at my daughter, "did you and Greg take out a life insurance policy on your father without his knowledge?" She flinched. "It was just business planning. Every company does it for key executives. Not through offshore accounts," Daniel, the investigator, pointed out. "And not without the person's knowledge." "What else?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Did you have anything to do with your father's death?" The room went completely silent. Stella's face crumpled, not in grief, but in rage. "How dare you?" she hissed. "How dare you accuse me of something like that?" Dad was pushing himself too hard. His heart gave out. "That's all. The autopsy report says otherwise," Daniel said quietly. My heart stopped. "What?" Daniel pulled another document from his briefcase. Mr. Campbell requested that if anything happened to him suddenly, I should order an independent toxicology report. Greg lunged forward. "This is ridiculous. You can't just—" "The results showed elevated levels of a compound that simulates heart attack symptoms," Daniel continued, handing me the report. "It's rare, nearly untraceable unless someone is specifically looking for it." The room spun around me. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself, the polished mahogany beneath my fingers, August's choice when we'd remodeled the boardroom 5 years ago. He'd loved this table. said it represented the solid foundation we'd built together. "Mom, you can't seriously believe this," Stella said, her voice softening into the tone she used when she wanted something as a child. "Daddy had heart problems. The doctors warned him." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The sharp suit, the perfect makeup, the cold calculation in her eyes that I'd been blind to for so long. When had this happened? When had my little girl, who used to crawl into our bed during thunderstorms, turned into someone capable of this? "Security," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. "Please escort my daughter and her husband to the conference room down the hall. Make sure they don't leave or use their phones." 2 security officers appeared at the door. Stella's face hardened again. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "We built this company too. Dad always said I was the future. Your father built this company with me," I corrected her. "You were handed opportunities. There's a difference." As they were led away, the boardroom erupted in whispered conversations. I turned to Thomas. "What do we do now?" "That depends on what you want, Teresa," he said gently. "The police should be involved given the toxicology report, but it's your call how we proceed." I closed my eyes, thinking of August. What would he want? Justice, certainly. But a public scandal involving his daughter? Having our family's dirty laundry exposed to the world? "Let's talk in private," I said to Thomas and Daniel. "The rest of you, please give us the room." An hour later, I sat alone in August's, my office, looking out at the city skyline. The same view August had gazed at countless times while making difficult decisions. Now it was my turn. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. It was Marco, our head of security. "Mrs. Campbell? Miss Stella is asking to speak with you. Alone." I nodded. "Send her in." Stella entered, her composure partially restored but her eyes still wary. She'd removed her suit jacket and suddenly she looked younger, more vulnerable. "Mom, this has gone too far," she said, sitting across from me. "We need to talk, just us. No lawyers, no investigators." "I'm listening." She leaned forward. "Greg's the one who took out that insurance policy, not me. I didn't even know about it until after Dad died." "And the toxicology report?" Her eyes darted away. "Greg has connections, people who provide certain services. He told me Dad was just going to get sick, enough to make him step back from the company. I never thought—" "Don't lie to me, Stella," I said sharply. "The recordings show you both discussing it." "We were just talking. People say things they don't mean all the time." I studied my daughter's face, searching for any trace of the child I'd raised. The Stella I knew would never even joke about harming her father. The mother I knew would never choose a company over her own daughter, she shot back. "Is that what you think this is about? The company?" I stood up, my grief suddenly turning to anger. "Your father is dead, Stella, and evidence suggests you and Greg may have been involved. This isn't about business anymore." She stood too, matching my posture. "Everything has always been about business with you and Dad. The company always came first. Even when I was little, you both missed my recitals, my games, everything. Then you expected me to be grateful when you handed me a job I didn't earn." Her words hit me like a physical blow. Had we really been such terrible parents? Had we been so focused on building our legacy that we'd failed to see our daughter slipping away? "Stella, no. You listen for once," she continued, her voice breaking. "I worked twice as hard as anyone else in this company because I had to prove I wasn't just the boss's daughter. But nothing was ever good enough for Dad. Or for you." Tears welled in her eyes, surprising me. Stella hadn't cried in my presence since she was a teenager. "So yes, Greg and I talked about taking over. We made plans, but I never wanted Dad dead. Never." She wiped angrily at her tears. "Greg told me yesterday that he took care of the problem with Dad. He said I shouldn't ask questions, that it was better this way." My blood ran cold. "Are you saying Greg acted alone?" "I don't know. Maybe he thought he was doing it for us, for our future." Stella's perfect composure had completely crumbled now. "I loved Dad. You have to believe me." I wanted to believe her. Part of me desperately needed to believe that my daughter wasn't capable of patricide. But the evidence, the recordings, her behavior at the funeral, It all pointed to her involvement. If what you're saying is true, I said slowly, then you need to help us prove it. Tell the police everything you know about Greg's connections. Stella's face paled. I can't do that. You don't understand who these people are, what they're capable of. And you don't understand what I'm capable of when it comes to protecting what August and I built, I replied, a steely resolve forming within me, including protecting you from yourself. I moved to the door and opened it. Greg was being held in another room, but I could see him through the glass walls, pacing like a caged animal. You have a choice to make, Stella. Right now. She stared past me at her husband, and something shifted in her expression. Fear, doubt, realization. If I help you, she whispered, what happens to me? To the company? That depends on how truthful you are, I said. But I can promise you one thing. If you don't help us, you'll lose everything. Not just the company, but your freedom. Stella took a deep breath, then reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She unlocked it and handed it to me. There's something you need to see, she said quietly. Something I recorded the night before Dad died. I was going to show him, but I never got the chance. I took the phone, pressed play on the video file she'd opened, and felt my world tilt on its axis as Greg's voice filled the room, calmly explaining exactly how August Campbell would die the next day. I stared at Stella's phone as Greg's voice played through the small speaker. The video showed only darkness, as if the phone had been recording from Stella's pocket or purse, but the audio was perfectly clear. It's already done, Greg was saying to someone. Campbell will be dead by tomorrow afternoon. The compound is undetectable unless they're specifically looking for it, which they won't be. Heart attack, plain and simple. The old man's been working too hard anyway. Everyone will believe it. A second voice responded. A voice I didn't recognize. And you're sure his daughter is on board? Stella? Greg laughed. She knows we need to take control, but she doesn't have the stomach for this part. She thinks we're just going to push him out of the company, force him to retire. Better she doesn't know the details. And the wife? Teresa's not a problem. Without August, she's nothing. Just a charity socialite who got lucky marrying the right guy. Stella will handle her. The recording continued for another minute. Details about payment, assurances about leaving no trail. Then it ended. I looked up at Stella, whose face was streaked with tears. When did you record this? I asked, my voice hoarse. The night before Dad died. Greg said he was having a business meeting at our house, but I was suspicious. He'd been acting strange for weeks, taking calls in private, meeting people he wouldn't tell me about. She wrapped her arms around herself. I left my phone recording and went out. When I came back and listened to this, her voice broke. I was going to show Dad the next morning, warn him. But I overslept, and by the time I got to the office, he was already dead. I finished for her. Why didn't you come to me then? Or go to the police? Stella looked away. I was scared and confused. Part of me couldn't believe Greg would actually go through with it. Then when Dad was really gone, I panicked. Greg told me we needed to move quickly to secure the company before you took control. So you showed up at your father's funeral with a lawyer and a court order. The pain of that moment rushed back. You smiled while handing me those papers, Stella. She flinched. I know. I was trying to convince myself this was what Dad would have wanted. Me taking over, continuing his legacy. And Greg kept saying if we didn't move fast, everything Dad built would be lost. I set the phone down carefully, as if it might explode. We need to give this to the police. Right now. Stella's eyes widened in fear. You don't understand. These people Greg was working with, they're dangerous. If they find out I recorded this, more dangerous than being an accessory to murder? I asked sharply. She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. Perhaps I had, with words instead of hands. I picked up the office phone and called Thomas in the conference room. Bring Daniel and come to my office, now, and call the police. While we waited, I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. The perfectly styled hair, the expensive clothes, the manicured nails. But beneath all that, I saw something I'd missed before. A terrified young woman who'd gotten in too deep and didn't know how to escape. Why, Stella? I asked softly. Was the company that important to you? Was waiting for your inheritance too much? She wouldn't meet my eyes. It wasn't about the money. Not really. Then what? Recognition, she whispered. Dad never saw me. Really saw me. He'd pat me on the head for small accomplishments, but never trusted me with anything important. When I married Greg, he finally seemed to take me seriously. Greg made me feel powerful. An uncomfortable recognition stirred within me. Hadn't I felt the same when I'd met August all those years ago? A brilliant, charismatic man who'd made me feel seen in ways no one else had. Your father loved you, I said, feeling the need to defend August. He was hard on you because he wanted you to be strong. He was hard on me because he never thought I was good enough, Stella countered. Not like you. You were his perfect partner. I almost laughed at the irony. Is that what you thought? That I was the favorite? Stella, your father criticized me constantly. Behind closed doors, he second-guessed every decision I made. He was proud of you in ways he never was of me. That's not true, she said, but doubt had crept into her voice. Before I could respond, Thomas and Daniel entered the office. I handed Daniel the phone. Stella recorded Greg confessing to planning August's murder. We need to secure this evidence immediately. Daniel nodded, already pulling out evidence bags from his briefcase. As a former police detective, he knew exactly how to handle potential evidence. What about Greg? Thomas asked. He's still in the conference room with security, I replied. He doesn't know about this recording. Stella stood up suddenly. I need to confront him. I need to hear him admit it to my face. Absolutely not, I said. It's too dangerous. We need to let the police handle this. He's my husband, Stella insisted, a flash of her old stubbornness returning. And he used me to kill my father. I deserve to look him in the eyes when he's caught. I recognized the determination in her expression, the same look August would get when he'd made up his mind. I'd never seen the resemblance so clearly before. We'll be right outside, Thomas said, glancing at me. The police are on their way, but it will take them at least 15 minutes to get here. I hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes, that's all. And we'll be watching through the glass. 10 minutes later, I watched in horror as Greg, realizing he was trapped, grabbed Stella by the throat. What had started as a confrontation had escalated into violence faster than any of us could react. Security was struggling to get the conference room door open. Greg had somehow jammed it. Do something! I screamed as Greg slammed Stella against the wall, her feet dangling above the floor. Through the glass, I could see her gasping for air, clawing at his hands. Daniel was already running toward the door with a fire extinguisher. He smashed it against the handle until the door burst open. Security rushed in, tackling Greg to the ground. Stella collapsed, coughing and gasping. I pushed past everyone to reach her, dropping to my knees beside her. Stella, are you okay? She nodded weakly, rubbing her throat. He admitted it, she rasped. He admitted everything. As security dragged Greg away, still struggling and shouting threats, Stella grabbed my hand. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't know. I should have trusted you. I helped her to her feet, supporting her as we walked out of the conference room. The police had arrived, filling the executive floor with uniforms and questions. Everything was happening so fast. Statements, evidence, Greg being led away in handcuffs. Through it all, I kept my arm around Stella's shoulders. Whatever she had done, whatever mistakes she had made, she was still my daughter, and we had both been manipulated by men who thought they knew what was best for us. As the police finished taking our statements, an officer approached with a grave expression. Miss Campbell, we need to talk to you about something urgent, she said. We've been looking into Mr. Parker's financial records and communications. This goes deeper than just your husband's murder. What do you mean? I asked. The officer glanced at Stella. We found communications between your son-in-law and James Whitmore. The name hit me like a physical blow. James Whitmore, August's oldest business rival, the man who had tried to destroy our company multiple times over the years. Whitmore? Stella's voice was still hoarse from Greg's attack. What does he have to do with this? The officer's expression darkened. Everything, it seems. And he's waiting for you both downstairs in the lobby right now. James Whitmore is here? I repeated, trying to make sense of this new threat. Whitmore had been August's nemesis for decades, their rivalry legendary in business circles. They'd started out as partners before a bitter falling out 30 years ago, and Whitmore had spent years trying to undermine Campbell Enterprises. "He's demanding to speak with both of you," the officer explained. "Says he has information critical to the investigation." Stella's hand found mine, her fingers cold and trembling. "Mom, I can't face him." "Not now." I squeezed her hand. "We face him together." The elevator ride down to the lobby felt endless. Stella leaned against the wall, still shaken from Greg's attack. The red marks on her throat were darkening into bruises. Despite everything she'd done, my heart ached for her. "What do you think he wants?" she whispered. "I don't know," I admitted. "But Whitmore never makes a move without calculating all the angles. Be careful what you say to him." The doors opened to reveal our company's marble lobby. James Whitmore stood by the reception desk, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, despite being well into his 70s. His silver hair was slicked back, his posture rigid and commanding. He turned as we approached, his eyes cold and assessing. "Teresa," he said with a nod. "Stella, quite the dramatic day you're having." "What do you want, James?" I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "The police say you've been communicating with Greg Parker." Whitmore smiled thinly. "Direct as always." "Yes, your son-in-law approached me about 6 months ago with an interesting proposition. He suggested that with August out of the picture, Campbell Enterprises would be vulnerable to acquisition." Stella stiffened beside me. "You were planning to take over our company?" "Planning? My dear, I've been orchestrating this for years." Whitmore gestured toward the seating area. "Shall we sit? This will take some explaining." We moved to the cluster of leather chairs. 2 police officers positioned themselves nearby, watching us carefully. "Your husband," Whitmore said, looking directly at me, "was always one step ahead of me. Every time I thought I'd finally outmaneuvered him, August would pull something brilliant out of thin air. It was frustrating." "So you decided to have him killed?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Whitmore laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Teresa, please. I'm a businessman, not a murderer. When Greg Parker approached me about helping with a transition of power at Campbell Enterprises, I played along to see where it would lead. I recorded every conversation, documented every meeting." He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a small flash drive, which he placed on the coffee table between us. "What's that?" Stella asked. "Insurance," Whitmore replied. When it became clear that Parker was planning something more permanent than forcing August into retirement, I distanced myself from the operation, but I kept the evidence. I stared at the tiny drive. "Why would you help us? You've spent decades trying to destroy what August and I built." Whitmore's expression softened slightly. "August was my rival, not my enemy. There's a difference. I wanted to beat him in business, fair and square, not this." He gestured vaguely toward the upper floors where Greg had been arrested. "I don't believe you," Stella said flatly. "This has to be another angle you're playing." "Believe what you want," Whitmore replied with a shrug. "But the evidence on that drive corroborates your recording and adds details about who else was involved. The police will find it very interesting." I picked up the flash drive, turning it over in my fingers. "What do you want in return, James? You've never given anything away for free." He smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his austere face. "Smart woman. August always said you were the real brains of the operation." "He said that?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "Many times." Whitmore leaned forward. "What I want is simple. A merger. Not a hostile takeover, but a true partnership between Whitmore Industries and Campbell Enterprises. The combined company would be unstoppable." Stella scoffed. "After everything that's happened, you expect us to just hand over half our company to you." "Not hand over," Whitmore corrected. "Share. And not to me. I'm retiring next year. My daughter Caroline would be co-CEO with you, Stella." "With me?" Stella looked stunned. "Assuming you're not implicated in your father's murder," Whitmore added coolly. "The evidence I have suggests you were merely a pawn in your husband's game, but that's for the courts to decide." I studied James Whitmore's face, trying to see beyond the practiced business mask. "Why now, James? Why not approach us with this merger idea years ago?" "August would never have agreed to it," he said simply. "His pride wouldn't allow it. But you, Teresa, you've always been more practical. And with Parker's plot exposed, both our companies are vulnerable. The market abhors scandal. Together, we could weather this storm. The police officer who had escorted us down stepped forward. Mr. Whitmore, we'll need to take that evidence and get a formal statement from you. Whitmore nodded. Of course. My lawyer is already on his way. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Think about my offer, Teresa. Stella, it's the best way forward for everyone. As the police led him away, Stella turned to me, her face pale. Do you believe him? I don't know, I admitted. James Whitmore has always been calculating, but he also had a code. He and your father understood each other in ways no one else did. Could you really consider a merger with Whitmore Industries? After everything? I sighed, suddenly feeling the weight of the day's events. Right now, I'm more concerned about keeping you out of prison. Stella flinched. Do you think I'll be charged as an accomplice? I don't know, I repeated. The recording helps show you weren't directly involved in planning your father's murder, but you still moved against me after his death. Used falsified documents to take control of the company. She looked down at her hands. I thought I was doing what Dad would have wanted. Greg kept saying you would run the company into the ground, that Dad had been protecting you from your own bad decisions for years. The casual cruelty of that lie stung, and you believed him. I wanted to believe him, she corrected softly. It was easier than admitting Dad had been right about Greg all along. He never trusted him, you know. I know. August had shared his concerns with me many times, but we respected your choice. Maybe we shouldn't have. A tear slid down Stella's cheek. I've made such a mess of everything. Before I could respond, Thomas approached with Daniel and several police officers. Teresa, Stella, the detective in charge wants to take you both downtown for formal statements. I'll accompany you. The next several hours passed in a blur of sterile rooms, repeated questions, and legal terminology. Stella was interviewed separately, the bruises on her neck now fully formed, a dark reminder of Greg's violence. I gave my statement 3 times, each telling bringing back the pain of August's death, the shock of Stella's betrayal at the funeral, the horror of discovering it had all been orchestrated by Greg. It was nearly midnight when Thomas finally drove us home, to my home, where Stella hadn't set foot since moving out after college. She hesitated at the front door. I can go to a hotel, she offered. Don't be ridiculous, I said, unlocking the door. You're staying here. The house felt strangely quiet, haunted by August's absence. His reading glasses still sat on the side table by his favorite chair. His coffee mug remained in the dish drainer where he'd left it the morning of his death. Nothing's changed, Stella murmured, looking around the familiar space. Everything's changed, I corrected, setting my purse down. Your father is gone. Greg will likely spend decades in prison. The company is in turmoil. And you and I trailed off, not sure how to define what we were now. Stella moved to the mantel, looking at the family photos arranged there. She picked up one from her graduation day, August beaming with pride, his arm around her shoulders. I miss him, she whispered. I keep thinking about all the things I never said to him, all the times I was too busy or too proud to call him back. I poured 2 glasses of whiskey, August's favorite, and handed one to her. He knew you loved him, Stella, despite everything. She took the glass, her hand trembling slightly. Did he? Yes. I took a sip, letting the amber liquid burn away some of my exhaustion. Your father wasn't perfect. Neither was I. We made mistakes raising you, focused too much on the business sometimes, but we were always proud of you. Even now? Her voice was small, childlike. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Thomas's name flashed on the screen. Teresa, turn on the news. Now. I grabbed the remote and switched on the television. Breaking news banners scrolled across the screen as the reporter's voice filled the room. Shocking development in the murder of business tycoon August Campbell. Police have confirmed that Gregory Parker, who was arrested earlier today for his involvement in Campbell's death, has been found dead in his holding cell. Initial reports suggest suicide, but sources close to the investigation tell us. Stella's whiskey glass shattered on the floor as she stared at the screen in horror. Greg is dead? My phone buzzed with another incoming call, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered and put it on speaker. Teresa Campbell. The voice was distorted, unrecognizable. You think this is over because Parker is dead? You have no idea what's coming for you and your daughter. No idea at all. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. Stella and I stared at each other, the threatening voice still echoing in the silent room. "Mom!" Stella's voice trembled. "What's happening?" I picked up the phone and immediately called Detective Martinez, who had been leading the investigation. After explaining about the call, she promised to send officers to watch the house and trace the number. "Don't go anywhere," she instructed. "We'll have a patrol car there in 10 minutes. After I hung up, Stella sank onto the couch, her face ashen. "Greg is dead. I can't believe it." Despite everything he'd done, I could see the shock and grief in her eyes. Whatever else he was, Greg had been her husband, a man she had loved. "The question is whether it was really suicide," I said, sitting beside her. "That call suggests otherwise." "Who else could be involved?" Stella whispered. "Whitmore?" I considered this. It's possible. His appearance today was too convenient, too calculated. The merger offer could be just another play for control. Stella wrapped her arms around herself. "Greg mentioned other investors a few times, people who were backing our rise to power, as he put it. I never met them. We need to find out who they are," I said, "before they come after us next." We spent a sleepless night, jumping at every sound, the police car a small comfort in our driveway. By morning, we were exhausted but resolute. We needed answers, and there was only one place to find them. The next day, we returned to Campbell Enterprises together. The news of Greg's death had already spread through the office, adding to the chaos and speculation. Some employees looked at Stella with suspicion, others with pity. "I need access to Greg's emails and files," Stella told me as we entered my office. "He kept everything password protected, but I might know some of his passwords." So, while Stella worked on accessing Greg's accounts, I called Thomas and asked him to meet us with Daniel, the investigator. Within an hour, our small team was assembled, poring over whatever documents we could find. "Look at this," Daniel said around noon, pointing to his laptop screen. Greg had a hidden email account. He was communicating with someone using only initials, JW. "James Whitmore," Stella said immediately. "Maybe," Daniel agreed. "But look at the dates. Some of these emails go back 2 years, and they reference meetings that took place at locations where Whitmore was known to be elsewhere. So either Whitmore was using a proxy," I suggested, "or JW is someone else." "There's a recurring mention of something called Ember Rise Project," Thomas noted, scanning through the emails. "Does that mean anything to either of you?" Stella and I both shook our heads. "Wait," I said suddenly, a memory surfacing. "Ember Rise?" August mentioned something about a Ember Rise maybe a week before he died. I thought he was talking about the city, about opening a new office there. Daniel typed rapidly. "Let me cross-reference this with the financial records we subpoenaed from Greg's accounts. There's a series of payments from a shell company called Ember Rise Holdings, LLC. The pieces were starting to come together, but we were still missing something crucial. Who was behind Ember Rise Holdings? Who had called and threatened us last night?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Marco, our head of security, knocked on the door, his expression grave. "Mrs. Campbell, you need to see this. Our surveillance team just sent it over." He placed a tablet on the desk, showing security footage from the building's parking garage. The timestamp showed 2:13 a.m., last night. A figure in dark clothing moved through the shadows toward August's reserved parking space, which I had continued to use. The person bent down near my car, then hurried away. "We found this attached to your car's undercarriage," Marco said, placing a small black device on the desk. "It's a tracking device, high-end military grade." "Who would have access to this kind of equipment?" Stella asked. Marco hesitated. "Very few people outside of government agencies or private military contractors," Daniel finished for him, "like the kind that Jason Whitmore runs." "Jason Whitmore," I repeated. "James's son?" Daniel nodded. "Former Special Forces. Started a security consulting firm after leaving the military. The kind that operates in gray areas. But Whitmore said his daughter Caroline would co-run the merged company," Stella pointed out. "Why would his son be involved?" Because Jason was passed over for leadership, I said slowly, remembering industry gossip from years ago. James chose Caroline as his successor, and Jason was furious. They had a public falling out. So Jason could be working against his father and sister, Thomas suggested, using Greg to get control of both companies. We need proof, I insisted. Something concrete we can take to the police. Stella sat up straighter, a determined look on her face I hadn't seen in years. I know where we might find it. Greg kept a safe deposit box at First National. He made me a signatory but told me never to access it unless there was an emergency. This qualifies, I said grimly. 3 hours later, we sat in Thomas's office, staring at the contents of Greg's safe deposit box. Documents, USB drives, and a small recorder lay spread across the table. Evidence not just of his involvement in August's murder, but of Jason Whitmore's master plan to eliminate both company patriarchs and seize control of the merged entity. It's all here, Thomas said, shuffling through the papers. Names, dates, payments. Jason Whitmore was using Greg as his puppet all along. And Greg kept receipts as insurance, Stella added. He must have suspected Jason might turn on him eventually. Which he did, I said quietly. I don't believe for a second that Greg's death was suicide. We handed everything over to Detective Martinez, who promised to pursue the investigation regardless of the Whitmore family's influence. Within days, Jason Whitmore was arrested, along with 3 associates. James Whitmore publicly disowned his son and withdrew his merger offer, seemingly horrified by Jason's actions. 1 month later, Stella and I stood at August's grave. The spring sun warmed our shoulders as we placed fresh flowers against the headstone. He would be proud of you, I told Stella, standing up to Jason, helping bring him to justice. She shook her head. I don't know about that. I still made terrible choices. I still believed Greg over my own family. We all make mistakes, I said, taking her hand. What matters is how we fix them. Stella had moved back home temporarily while we worked to rebuild both our relationship and the company. The board had unanimously voted to reinstate me as president, with Stella as executive vice president, a position she would have to grow into, but one that acknowledged her potential. I've been thinking, Stella said as we walked back to the car, about what happens next, for us, for the company. And, I prompted, I want to build something new within Campbell Enterprises, a division focused on supporting women entrepreneurs. Dad always talked about legacy, but I don't think he ever fully understood what that meant. I smiled, feeling a mixture of grief and pride. I think that's a wonderful idea. Your father's legacy lives on through what we build, but also through what we choose to rebuild after it breaks. As we drove away from the cemetery, I glanced at my daughter, this complicated, flawed, resilient woman I had raised. We had survived betrayal, murder, and threats. We had faced our mistakes and begun to forgive each other. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Not just as mother and daughter, but as partners in the truest sense, the way August and I had always been, the way it should have been all along.